is Sheldon Watney, a renowned leader, CEO and President of the First Nations Natural Resource Centre of Excellence. Joining him are two esteemed guests. We've got Mike Crabtree, the President and CEO of the Saskatchewan Research Council, and we've got David Brock, the Vice President of Energy Security at the Crown Investment Corporation. Together, they'll explore the growing global interest in Saskatchewan's nuclear capabilities, discussing the province's potential to lead in this critical sector and the opportunities it presents for innovation and economic growth. Now, please join me in welcoming Sheldon Watney, along with Mike Crabtree and David Brock, to the stage for what promises to be an engaging and thought-provoking conversation.
Thank you. How was lunch? So, Mike had told me that he's been keeping an eye on me through the morning, so he hasn't seen me stand still for more than 3 seconds for the last couple hours. But how about a big round of applause for Prairie Land for the great meal that they provided us? And I also want to once again acknowledge Nutrien as our legacy sponsor for today. And I'm able to be joined up here with I guess two of my colleagues, and you know, when it comes to a lot of the work that we entertain here in Saskatchewan and that we deal with from day to day, there's a lot of focus, as we're hearing from many of our speakers, on energy, energy development, power generation, you know, nuclear and potential nuclear deployment in the future, and then we also hear and discuss many aspects around critical minerals and also rare earth elements. As we look at the transition, the energy transition, what does that all entail when we're looking at powering vehicles through electricity and so forth, and the great work that SRC has done around the rare earth processing. And so we've been engaged in a lot of conversations over the past number of months and in the last few years, but it's trying to find our place as First Nations as well in where we fit into the global economy. We understand our responsibilities and our rights as we refer to them from a treaty and traditional perspective, and now growing in maturity, if you will, with respect to the corporate or business opportunities that arise from a lot of these sectors. But thinking about the global economy and the global demands, those are some of the things that we're learning about every day as First Nations, respectfully as individual nations and also collective nations. How do we participate, and how do we work within those sectors? And so I'm able to be joined here by David Brock from the Crown Investment Corporation. So let's give David a big round of applause. He's the Vice President at CIC, and of course our Chief Executive Officer here of the Saskatchewan Research Council, Mike Crabtree. Let's give him a big round of applause as well. And maybe, David, I'll call on you at this time to take a few moments to introduce yourself and your role and some of the responsibilities that you deal with CIC.
Okay. Thanks so much. I don't know if you can hear me yet. No. How about now? That's much better. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed lunch. First, perhaps I can just extend my thanks, Sheldon, to you, to Chief Chyson, and the rest of the board of directors of the center. We've only been here for half a day of 2 planned days. I know, Sheldon, you and the team have been very patient in planning this over the past number of years, but you've put together an absolutely superb group of individuals to be in the same room for 2 days. Particularly what I find is too rare an opportunity for First Nations-owned businesses, as well as industry and government and others to be in the same room and have these types of conversations. So credit to you and the center for doing so, and the value of that is being demonstrated every hour here. Again, my name is David Brock. I'm the Vice President of Energy Security with the Crown Investments Corporation. Those of you who live in Saskatchewan or live in another part of Canada or another part of the world who've not heard of CIC, we are the government of Saskatchewan's holding company that owns our 6 large commercial Crown corporations, which of course includes Sask Power and Sask Energy, whom are represented here today. The responsibility of my division is around policy and planning for electricity, natural gas, and nuclear energy, and it's particularly on nuclear where I know there's a lot of cause for excitement in the room, and something that I'm looking forward to speaking about more over the next 20, 25 minutes or so with you and Mike, Sheldon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. I'll turn things over to Mr. Mike Crabtree from SRC.
Good afternoon. My name's Mike Crabtree. I'm the President and CEO of the Saskatchewan Research Council. I've got a couple of things I want to say first, which is, can we make sure that one of the desserts is kept for me, because I didn't get a chance to get it before we came up here, so reserve a dessert. So yeah, I'm President and CEO of Saskatchewan Research Council. For those of you who are not familiar with SRC, we are a Treasury Board Crown. We're owned by government, which means we're owned by you. We are the second largest research, development, and commercialization organization in Canada after the National Research Council. So we work in energy, we work in agriculture, we work in mining and minerals, often at some of the leading edge areas of technology. And as Sheldon mentioned, we're currently working on a very significant nuclear program, which we'll get into in terms of microreactors, which has particular, I think, resonance and importance to Indigenous communities, and also on rare earths, which are a really key mineral type of critical minerals, which we heard a little bit about earlier, and again, of real resonance and importance to Indigenous. I'd just like to say at the end of this little section, thanks very much, Sheldon. I really appreciate it. It's a privilege to be up here and given the chance to have this discussion. Thank you.
Awesome. I got just a couple questions for each of you, because we have about 20 minutes or so maybe we can spend about 10 minutes on each question, I would say. If you can describe your experiences in your international travels and what you're hearing about the interest in Saskatchewan's nuclear, and I know for us as First Nations, our leadership and our technicians from across the province, we hear about nuclear almost daily now. But again, just to my earlier introduction, trying to better understand the global demands, our North American demands, and our regional demands here within Saskatchewan is always something that we're on a continuous learning journey, to try and learn more about. So maybe share, if you can, some of the things that you've been exposed to, that you've been hearing, and that maybe that you're looking towards in terms of planning around nuclear from a CIC and SRC perspective.
Great. Thank you, Sheldon. So two of the areas for which we're responsible at the Crown Investments Corporation are supply chain development and workforce development on behalf of the province, to make sure that Saskatchewan is in a position to contribute both the supplies and expertise and persons to the projects being pursued by Sask Power with their grid scale technology, and by SRC with their research on the microreactor. In addition to that, though, we want to make sure that Saskatchewan people and businesses are well positioned where they so choose to provide those goods, expertise, or their own labor to projects in other parts of Canada and other parts of the world. And I think that's going to be of particular interest to those individuals who are weighing the options around whether or not to maybe start a business or retool your business to get into the nuclear supply chain, or to explore educational opportunities, whether you're in grade 5 and thinking about science and technology as part of your future and maybe have an interest in nuclear, or you're already an experienced engineer and want to maybe pick up some additional training to be qualified to work in nuclear. I think part of the impetus around that will be not just the projects that are happening in Saskatchewan, but the growth internationally. And so maybe, Sheldon, I'll just even speak about what I've observed in the past month alone. Being in Ottawa just a few weeks ago for the meetings of the Canadian Nuclear Association, Saskatchewan was heavily engaged by the countries of both the United Kingdom as well as France. And only last week, I was with Minister Jeremy Harrison, the minister responsible for CIC and Sask Power, in Warsaw, Poland, to talk again about these similar interests. Let me tell you, the world is watching what's happening in Saskatchewan. There is tremendous interest and excitement around the projects here and around the type of expertise and supplies that we already have in this province based on decades of experience, not only in uranium mining, but in other parts of the mining sector, in oil and gas, in advanced manufacturing, and in all the knowledge economy aspects of the provincial sector, for which people see an opportunity for us to be able to contribute to projects around the world. 34 countries have committed to tripling nuclear energy capacity by 2050. That's backed by 20 major financial institutions, and now the tech sector, particularly in the United States, who is already moving on building nuclear power to fuel their major data and particularly artificial intelligence demands. And so one of the messages that I have to those in the room, if you're the owner of a business or thinking about being the owner of a business, or if you yourself want to work in nuclear, one of the things I cause you to consider is not only the opportunities with the projects in Saskatchewan, but the opportunities nationally and globally. And I hope that helps motivate some of your thinking and questions related to nuclear, and hopefully we can help answer some of those today.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's interesting for you to bring up the AI and data center piece. And as we know, tomorrow on the agenda we have Amazon Web Services that are here and SaskTel to speak a little bit about that, but also understanding that along with the deployment and development of AI and data centers, that comes with enormous power needs as well. And so moving along that path with you as First Nations is going to be really important conversations and partnerships as we move forward. So it's nice of you to bring that forward. Mike, maybe I'll ask you that same question in terms of your reach and experience and exposure internationally. Some of the things that you're hearing, because I always think as First Nations and even people in Saskatchewan, we live in a relatively small bubble, like hockey families. And so it's like, how do we learn more, and then how do we strategize and formulate strategies in terms of those demands and how we move forward here in Saskatchewan. So maybe, Mike, I'll ask you to share the same.
So my background has been in energy, and I've worked in Latin America, Africa, right across Africa, across the Middle East, Latin America, Southeast Asia. And to put this, one of the questions I'm sometimes asked, why is this all happening so fast, and why is it happening now? If you look at this in that sort of context, you can say that the 20th century was the century of oil and gas. And although we are still reliant predominantly on oil and gas, that will feather out over this century. And the century that's developing now is the century of energy minerals. If you look at Canada's capability in terms of its mineral resources, and energy minerals in particular, what are often called critical minerals, you could put it in context that Canada will be the Saudi Arabia of the 21st century, and that is owned and controlled by the folks in this room and your relatives. This represents a huge opportunity for partnership and collaboration. And the smaller scale, the micro-reactors that SRC is responsible for bringing into the province, which is about providing energy for smaller scale industrial opportunities and northern communities. And that's going to be really, really, really exciting. One thing that struck me through this morning, and I thought it was a read to the Indigenous culture and storytelling and narrative. I've had the privilege of being able to make propositions into Wall Street, into Los Angeles, into London for millions and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. And people say, well, how do you do that? It's all about stories. It's all about the narrative. And Chief Delbert Wolpass, and I listen to both of them a lot. It's about vision and narratives. So whether you're selling a new refinery or you're selling something within your leapfrog into this new energy minerals piece. I got one quick story. I worked in lots of Indigenous people there, significant degrees of poverty there. The telephone system there, which is old rotary telephones, which I'm sure some people in this room can remember, the whole system was run by car batteries and truck batteries. And every 10 years, there was enough money came down from the central government to replace the batteries, if they were lucky. And you couldn't call the next village or the next town, so it was very isolated, very difficult to create social and economic development when you just simply couldn't communicate. Then they realized the introduction of the cellular phone. Cellular phones leapfrogged that whole requirement for landlines. So those communities there in the late 80s and the early 90s were one of the first in the world to embrace cellular culture. And they were doing cellular banking in the mid-80s on their phones. What the opportunity I think we see here with this energy transition is for indigenous communities and groups here to leapfrog into this. Don't follow and go through the routes that you have to get to, the traditional routes. Leapfrog. And the narratives and the stories to get there are going to be incredibly important.
That's great sharing. Let's give Mike and David a round of applause for those comments. And I think at the financial sector and the investment sector, those are some of our nations have become very sophisticated and innovative, but many of our nations are just starting on their journey in learning as well. And to your point, getting that opportunity to share the narrative and educate is such an important thing. Build these partnerships and these relationships within the province with SRC, with CIC, in terms of our provincial crown and the corporations. It provides that opportunity to learn as well and to share in who we are as First Nations, but there's also value in your sharing as well, and how do we start to walk this road together, respecting responsibilities and rights as Nations, also respecting the responsibilities as well that, let's say, a CIC has or SRC to the greater good of the people. So those, some of your strategy or what you've been doing in terms of including and working alongside First Nations or Indigenous people, maybe for those that are here today, just to get some insight into some of your thinking as organizations and maybe some of your direction and strategy, moving forward as well. It's good, important share.
But how we need to reflect that here for people who are actually sitting at the table at home. One of the ways we've done this over the past couple of years, and we'll continue to do this in the coming years through the Crown Investments Corporation on behalf of the Government of Saskatchewan, is to turn it over to the people who know best what they're talking about. And so particularly I know the partnership that's existed and I think is growing and deepening between SIMSA, the Saskatchewan Industrial Mining Suppliers Association, and the First Nations Centre of Excellence around making sure that businesses have an opportunity to ask those who know best, what does the business environment look like for nuclear, and what does that look like in a First Nations context, and then how can you translate that into a business opportunity? Mike, you're right, there is a great importance in storytelling, but I also want to make sure that we're truth-telling and not telling tall tales. Yeah. And so part of that around, for example, supply chain investment is that there are standards that need to be met, and in nuclear, those are particularly high. And so then you start to get into this alphabet soup of acronyms of ASME standards and ISO standards and CSA standards, and how did they fit together, and how do you get them, how much does it cost to get there? I'm certainly not the person who should be explaining that, but fortunately there are some companies in this room, some of whom are Indigenous owned, like J&E Welding, like Extended Hydraulics, like March Consulting, and others who have gone through this experience, and non-Indigenous companies as well who are interested in partnership like Grand Consulting. They've actually taken that first step as Saskatchewan-based and many Indigenous-owned businesses to figure out how do you weave your way through that standard-setting context to make sure that you actually are qualified and accredited to be able to work your way into the nuclear industry and sell your goods and expertise. But in addition to that, let's not kid ourselves. this is a global and highly competitive business. And so one of the reasons why I mentioned in the previous answer about paying attention to the growth globally is because for a lot of businesses, the economies of scale may not be there for just providing your materials to a SaskPower or to SRC. So make sure that you understand what those businesses' opportunities are across the rest of Canada and in other parts of the world. There are barriers to entry in that regard, but for those companies that are willing or have already made the step, I think they can provide great leadership and example at the company level and great education through the First Nations Centre of Excellence and SIMSA in partnership with government to help explain what those steps are, what you need to do to get there, and then it's up to people to make their own individual business decisions based on their interests.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, David. And you know, in working alongside many of our First Nations or Indigenous businesses, it's no easy task to look at getting pre-qualified. And I know IMC and Sean Howdle is here with SDC Industrial, and there's a number of our corporations. I know Ron is here with Kitsaki; he'll be on, but the arduous process that we need to go through sometimes to become a pre-qualified or a qualified supplier, we need that support. And so, you know, in working with SIMSA, IMCN is a new group, Indigenous Manufacturer Contractors Network. So as organizations, we're trying to do our best as well to work to support each other, but the larger industry partners is where we need that support, and we need that mutual understanding every day. So there, you know, there's reasons why some of those processes are in place, but the ones that we're able to work with, we need to do a better job at understanding so we can get more of our companies into the
So maybe I can just mention, Sheldon, I mentioned on the supply side, it's also important to think about the demand side for the reasons that you noted. And I think in the uranium industry, we've already seen Cameco be a leader in that area. I understand there's very high Indigenous procurement from companies such as NextGen and Denison who are moving and maturing in the uranium market. But for those companies that are here and have started to engage in Saskatchewan, Westinghouse, GE Hitachi, GE Vernova, X Energy, Atkins Realis, Aecon, there's also that demand side. And so what I'd ask is also of the companies that are here that are Saskatchewan based, make sure that you're approaching those nuclear companies in particular, and as they're thinking about the development of their supply chains globally, be a bit bold and put forward the expertise and the materials that we have. Talk to them about what it takes to get into their supply chain, but also talk to those companies about what support they can provide to make sure that your employees, in particular I think Indigenous employees, are properly supported so that they're getting the education and support they need to be at work every day, to come home successful, and to have careers over decades.
Awesome, thank you. So Mike, I'll turn things over. You got a few minutes left. If you can take some time to share too your experience and vision, I guess, on working with First Nations communities.
Sure. I think it's worth spending that couple of minutes to talk about the microreactor opportunities here. And I'd encourage anybody in this room to reach out to us. We have an engagement center just 5 kilometers from here at SRC, where we have a full-scale model mock-up of what a microreactor looks like. So what are they, and what do they offer? These are essentially nuclear batteries. So they arrive to the community site fully fueled. They would operate for between 8 to 10 years at full power, developing about 5 megawatts of power. Put that in context, that's sufficient for perhaps 2,000 or even 3,000 homes, or a very significant industrial base. That would replace, for those communities that may be off-grid, that would replace something like 1 million barrels of diesel over that period of time, 500,000 tons of CO2. And in terms of the spent fuel that would be created after completion of that 10 years, which would be taken with the reactor when the reactor is swapped out, just like a battery, it would be about half a hockey net worth of fuel. So these offer very, very significant opportunities to provide reliable, sustainable, low-carbon power to communities, remote communities, and remote mine site operations in remote industrial areas. So we see a significant opportunity for a significant number of these microreactors in the province in the next 10 to 15 years. And this comes to a point, I think, of managing expectations that we've talked about here. We often talk about nuclear, whether it's large-scale nuclear or the micronuclear that I've just described. They are not going to be in the province in 2 years. As David said, there is a whole series of processes that we need to be able to go through to be able to bring these reactors, even the first of a kind, into play. So we're looking at that sort of 5 to 7 to 10-year horizon. But the benefits once these are installed, both the large scale and the micro-nuclear, are going to be very significant to the province and very significant, I think, to Indigenous communities and businesses.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Let's give Mike and David a big round of applause. And, before we depart, I just want to say, David, the intent was that we need to be part of the global economy as First Nations, and you know, obviously the respect we built with groups and governments and organizations like yours, Mike, as well. They're very important and critical to that, because the exactly how we intended the day, to start off with our traditional and cultural understandings, because we're part of the energy transition, but in learning about Western education, we need to do our part to invoke that interest and that education for the non-First Nations people to transition their understanding and thinking as well as we're seeing. And so as we move from the morning to the afternoon, now the focus shifts a bit more to nuclear, critical minerals, for our people we're aspiring to be a part of and having our rights respected within. So I thank you for your time. Let's give them one more big round of applause. We do have a couple gifts for you as well, but thank you very much for spending some time with me.
Thanks, Neil.
Neil, thank you.
Thank you very much. Meetings that the First Nations in Saskatchewan have had through various tribal councils or through specific bands in regards to Saskatchewan's nuclear door. A lot of good trade show venue people there looking to talk to people, so make sure you stop in there. We got a couple key items. Before we break out into the, we have at the main plenary, we have Lisa McBride here. She's from GET at Hitachi, and she has a presentation at about 3:50-ish. We have 4 great chiefs here. We're fortunate to have Chief Willie Sellers from British Columbia, Chief Evan Tapetat from Kakawishtahow, Chief Darcy Bear from Whitecap Dakota Nation. Turns back to the plenary and listen to the 4 great chiefs that were able to give time and you'll gain great insight to their viewpoints. Right now, it's 1:50-ish. We have 2 breakout rooms to my right. There's breakout room number 1, illustrated on the wall, and breakout room number in the far left, in the far right corner of my right. Moderator Emily Wheatung McGuinness will be talking about the role of nuclear power in Canada's energy future. There's a panel of experts there. It's a great session around nuclear power and the role and the future of it in Canada. In breakout number 2, we have Sven List as the moderator. He's going to talk about critical minerals in the global race for it. You hear lots of it through Donald Trump in the last few months. So he's the expert at it. I don't know anything about it. But let's learn about critical minerals, what they are, what they mean, where they're located, and what's their use. But there's a great panel on breakout number 2. And in breakout 1 and 2, at about an hour later, opportunities in regional electricity planning, moderated by Josh Thomas, and Saskatchewan perspective on trade and energy corridors, which is a new key component for the federal government and some of the premiers. In breakout number 2, the moderator is Murad Al-Khatib. But with that, if people can just make their way now to breakout 1 and 2, return back here, please, at about 3:50, and we will finish the day off. But thank you very much, and let's support the breakout sessions and the people that are giving their time to make presentation. Thank you very much.
How deep is your love? Pull me closer again. How deep is your love? How deep is your love? How deep is your love? How deep is your love?
Ooh, baby, I feel like music sounds better with you. And love might bring us back together so good. I feel like music sounds better with you. And love might bring us back together. I feel so good.